Welcome to another episode of Suddenly Single. I have with me today, I'm very excited, the Right Honourable Ann Widdecombe. So Anne, personally, I think you're a national treasure.
Yeah.
I just wanna get out of here.
Yeah, thank you. I bet you get loads of fan mails, but I think most of our viewers and listeners will know you as one of the most forthright and outspoken politicians that we have in this country.
Well, I hope so, because people are always saying to me, why don't politicians answer the question? To which my answer is, because we know what the next day's headlines are going to be. And that if the media treated us in a more straightforward fashion, we would treat the public in a more straightforward fashion.
So you've just developed a rather tough skin to what people will write or say. Is that what you're saying?
It's not so much that. It's not so much a tough skin, but I always used to say this. I used to say, because I had a Kentish constituency while I was in Parliament. Mm-hmm. And I used to say, if I stood on the coast near my Kentish constituency, didn't actually take in the coast, if I stood on the coast and I looked over and I said, oh, you can see France today, somebody would write that up as, Europe's come closer, says Widdecombe. And that's the sort of thing we look out for.
But we're here today to talk about something else. So we're here to talk about being single. Now, you and I have discussed this. We are quite different on this level. And this is why I'm glad that you've come in. You're very comfortable being single. You're very happy being single. And I've admitted that I'm a bit pathetic at that. I prefer to be in a couple. Why do you think that is, that you are very comfortable in your own skin?
It's simply not an issue. It really isn't. And I can't understand the number of people who say to me, oh, you've never married, Do you regret that? Oh, you've never had children. Do you regret that? And it's just never been an issue. But I do remember the first time I realised that it was what I wanted, which is when I just bought a new flat in London. And my sister-in-law came and she looked at the flat. She said, it's a very nice flat, but Anne, don't you wish that when you came home at night there was somebody else here? And I thought, dear heavens, when I come home at night, that is the one moment when I give thanks to Almighty God that there isn't anybody there.
Well,
and I realised, actually, that was what I wanted.
I would put it to you, Miss Widdecombe, that that's not entirely true, because when you go through the door at night, there is somebody called Aloysius there, isn't there?
Aloysius, my cat.
Yes.
Who is my first cat since 2010. I got him in 2023. I hadn't had a cat since 2010. Aloysius, I more or less rescued because his owner was going to live on a main road. And yes, he's very jolly company, but believe me, he doesn't ask me where I put his socks. He doesn't ask me what's for dinner, and he doesn't talk when I'm watching the television. And apart from the fact that he will bat my pen when I'm using it, he gives me no issues at all.
You're an animal lover in general, though, aren't you?
Yes.
And anyone who wants to see the amount of animals that Anne looks after and cares for and raises money for, look at the Widdyweg, because it's wonderful. You've got goats. You've got what's the story behind the goats?
Well, the goats is very straightforward. It's the Buttercups Goat Sanctuary. It's the only sanctuary just for goats in the whole country, and it is in what was my former constituency. Mm-hmm. So that was how I came across it. But I'm also patron of the Safe Haven for Donkeys in the Holy Land. And they came to see me just before I was retiring. And I asked them where it was. And I thought they said Glasgow. Mm-hmm. But as the conversation developed, I thought, we're not talking about Scotland. So I said, I'm sorry, where did you say it was? Gaza. So it was rather different. But it's a tremendous sanctuary. It's actually based in Netanya in Israel. It's a tremendous sanctuary, and it does a load of work, both for Palestinian and for Israeli donkeys. And I've been out there, and we've been into the Palestinian areas, and they take in free veterinary treatment. They take in, above all, education. Trying to persuade people that if they look after their donkeys, it's actually a better investment for them, mm-hmm. because the donkey can work much more easily and the donkey will last longer. So it's very different from the attitude towards animals here. But it's making good progress. And let me tell you a story about that sanctuary. Before Israel built the wall, it was still possible to pass from the Palestinian areas into Israel. And on one occasion, two Palestinian boys, were on the path, and they came upon a donkey which had just been dumped by the roadside, and it was too weak to get up. It was half-starved. And they knew about the sanctuary because they'd had a visit, they'd had a school visit. But they didn't know how to get the donkey there. They couldn't make it stand up. They didn't know where the sanctuary was. And so they approached, of all people, these are 2 Palestinian boys, an Israeli soldier. And he summoned his colleague, and between the 4 of them, they got the donkey onto the military truck, and the Israeli soldiers drove it off to the sanctuary. And I think that's a wonderful parable.
That is a wonderful parable. And talking about parables, I would say another love of your life is your faith.
Yes.
Would that be true?
That would absolutely be true.
So
yes.
you were brought up a Protestant, but you converted to Catholicism. When did you convert and why?
93. It's quite true. I was brought up in a very practising Anglican family. It wasn't lip service Anglican. It was deeply Anglican. My uncle was a vicar. My brother was a vicar. My little nephew is a vicar. In fact, I've often joked that the purpose of the Widdecombe's is to breed vicars for the Church of England. We have so many of them in the family. So my roots, Anglican roots, were really quite deep. But I became very disillusioned with the Anglican Church over a number of years. Never seemed to know what it stood for. Always compromised, always sacrificed faith to fashion, creed to compromise. And still didn't fill its pews as a result of doing that. And eventually, when we got to the point where the 4th most senior bishop in the Church of England, the 4th most senior bishop, was actually questioning articles of creed, I thought, this is enough. And for a while, I was an agnostic, and then I came back as an Anglican simply because that's where my roots were. Not for long. I became a Catholic.
But how did that happen? Did you start to go to Catholic church? Was it listening to?
It was over a period of time.
Uh-huh.
I'd been educated in a Catholic convent, so I was very familiar with Catholicism. It was a girls' Catholic boarding school.
Okay.
And run by nuns.
Yeah.
And
me too.
Yeah, right. So I was very, very familiar with it. But I left school in 1966. And I had nothing more to do directly with Catholicism until I went into Parliament in 1987. And that year, David Alton, who was a Lib Dem MP, had a bill to limit the time at which abortions could be carried out, wanted to bring it down to 18 weeks. I got involved in that campaign, and as a result, David was a Catholic, and as a result came into contact again, for the first time in a very long time, with organised Catholicism. And of course it had changed massively, because we'd had Vatican II. It had changed completely. That was where it started, but it didn't happen overnight. Those things never do.
Did you start going to church by yourself?
I left the Church of England in November 92, and everybody thinks I became a Catholic the next day. I didn't become a Catholic until the following Easter. It was gradual. And yes, I started to go to Westminster Cathedral, felt very much at home, much to my surprise.
Do you think it's because the lines are drawn very firmly in the Catholic
Yes.
Church, whether you believe in them or not? I mean, I said to you earlier that I am also a Catholic, and there are some things that I absolutely believe in, and other things that I find quite difficult, like being divorced. We've got a joint friend in common, Andrew Pearce, and I had him in quite recently. And he said, I don't like saying this, but it's absolutely true. You know, Siobhan, I'm a Catholic like you. I don't believe that gay couples should be allowed to raise children. I think it should be a male and a female.
He doesn't believe in gay marriage either.
No, he doesn't.
He wrote an article for the Mail against gay marriage.
Yes, he did.
And that's why when people said, because I'm against it, and when people said, oh, we were bigoted, etc., I said, well, hang on, you've actually got gay people who don't believe it. So, why does that make everybody else bigoted? There isn't much of an answer to that. It's a question of conscience. What should be the preferred model? Well, I would say a man and a woman. But equally, I believe that gay couples have the right to leave their inheritance to each other and to be recognised as the next of kin. But you could have done all of that, as I said in Parliament at the time, you could have addressed all of that through the individual laws governing inheritance and next of kin and all the rest of it. You didn't have to have an institution that aped marriage.
Do you think having a faith also helps towards not feeling lonely and being okay, living on your own, etc.? Because you believe there is a presence and somewhere that we're going afterwards, and that this is not the be-all and end-all, this life.
Yes, of course. Faith is a comfort, but faith is also a challenge. I say to people, don't think of faith as some sort of crutch that you use to get through life. It's not like that at all. Very challenging and very demanding.
Mm-hmm. I mean, as well as being obviously incredibly clever, you've done some really good fun things on television, haven't you? You've done Celebrity Big Brother. I mean, what kind of experience was that?
One I never thought I would even contemplate. And in fact, when I changed agents, I said to my new agent, look, whatever else you ask me to do, never, ever say 2 words. And those 2 words are big and brother. I don't want to know. And I said, if they offer me $1 million, I don't want to know. And he didn't mention it for several years. And then he rang me up and he said, now, I'm going to say something and just give me a chance. And I said, you're going to say big brother. And he said, yes. And I said, no. And he said, just hang on. And because it was celebrating 100 years of women's suffrage, they were doing a special Big Brother. And in fact, they even wanted to call it Big Sister, but the channel wouldn't have it. So it was going to be a special Big Brother based on 100 years of women's suffrage. There were going to be more serious debates of this, that, and the other thing. And I said to Andrew, well, how long is that going to last? And he said, if it goes wrong and you want to leave, you're not in the jungle, you're not in Australia, you're in Elstree. Just walk through the door and you're in London. No, what's the issue? So I decided to do it. And I think the entire production team thought I was going to leave in the first week. And so did I. But in fact, I became the runner-up who stayed for the entire month.
Yeah. You did. And you became just as popular. In fact, I would say even more popular when you did Strictly Come Dancing.
Oh, vastly more popular.
With the fabulous Anton de Beck. I mean, who can forget you spinning around the room in that?
15 years ago.
I can still see you in my head.
I can still see me in my head.
Flung around in that yellow dress on the
floor.
floor.
Yeah, I can still see exactly that in my head. Yeah.
That was genius. And you said something earlier to me that made me laugh. You said, I had a fight on Strictly nearly every day because you didn't want to put the makeup on.
Well, it wasn't that I didn't want to put the makeup on, but I refused false eyelashes. I refused a hairpiece. I refused the spray tan. And I insisted that every time I wore a dress rather than trousers, I had to have matching knee-length leggings because I knew there would be a wardrobe malfunction. I didn't want to have to worry about modesty. I knew there would be a malfunction. Yeah. And there was. It happened at Blackpool. It happened when I was in that big yellow dress. And, of course, there was no worry about it.
With Anton with one leg, one arm.
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, that still has to be one of the classic moments of television.
Oh, it's the one they always show. Yeah.
And you and him, and you and Craig Revel-Horwood, who is Beth's columnist, are still very friendly, aren't you?
Yes. I mean, we're not, we don't see each other often, but we do communicate from time to time. And I did the Strictly tour with Craig because Anton doesn't do it. And when they first asked me to do it, I said, no, you're joking. I can't dance with anybody except Anton. And they said, well, we were hoping you'd agree to dance with Craig Revel-Horwood. And that was too funny to refuse. So I spent 5 weeks doing a pantomime Charleston up and down the country and in the Irish Republic with Craig Revel-Horwood.
Do you know what? I've often said this to Craig, and he's very funny. I say, why do you behave like that? You've got this... And he said, it's a persona, darling.
He's got to wave the dance flag, is how he would put it. He's got to look at the dance rather than the fun.
He does look at the dance. So if we go back in time, you grew up in Singapore, didn't you? Till the age of 9, at least.
No, I was in Singapore from the age of 5 and a half. Until I was nearly 9, yeah. So some of my growing up was in Singapore.
Okay. So, and you lived alone after you came back, you went to school, but then you lived alone until you were almost 50. But then you let your mum move in with you, didn't you? Your mum, Rita.
The situation was that when my father died in 1998, 1999, when my father died, my mother came to live with me. I mean, the family arrangement was always, my mother looked after her mother. She looked after my father in his final 2 years. And then I just assumed, I just took it for granted that I would look after her. So she came to live with me when after my father died.
And how was that? Because I think, our readers are around 60. To have your parent move in with you at that age, is that quite stressful?
No, certainly not. I do get slightly irritated when people ask that.
Get irritated with me, Anne. Just go for it.
I do get irritated because, of course it's not stressful. She's my mother, or was my mother.
Well, you clearly had a very good relationship with her then.
Well, of course, she was my mother, for goodness sake.
Okay.
I can't see that. I really can't get it that unless there's something very, very wrong in the relationship, indeed, and I know in some instances it is. But I really can't get it when daughters would have a problem with their mothers coming to live with them. I mean, there was a time when all households were multi-generational. I mean, I grew up in a family with a grandmother. She was there. She was there from before I was born until I was 14 when she died. And I took that utterly for granted. My mother grew up in a family which had not only her grandmother, but also a bachelor uncle lived there as well. It was normal. And we've now all broken up into these sad little units. And people people actually moan if the children boomerang, as they put it. Well, why should we object to multi-generational living? What's the big issue?
Well, I do. My daughter's been round back at the age of 28 with her 30-year-old boyfriend. And I have to be honest, I'm loving it.
Well, there you go.
I love the company.
There you go.
So you've written books as well, haven't you? How many is it? About 6?
I've written 7 books in all.
7 books.
1 autobiography and 1 religious book. And then 4 straightforward novels and 1 detective novel.
You do still do some serious political stuff. Like,
Loads.
You are the ex-minister for prisons. And that is quite a big topic at the moment. So I'm going to go a bit sideways with this.
Okay.
What do you think about women who write to men on death row?
I think it's very regrettable. Now, I do know, that there are perfectly decent people who feel sorry and who want to express their pity and their love and their encouragement. But that's not usually what it's about. Usually it's somebody with an infatuation with somebody on death row, and it's not healthy.
Okay, so we will advise them not to continue down this path.
I would advise you not to continue down this path unless you've done it out of pure Christian charity.
Oh, okay. That's a very nice way to say it. So I'm going to bring in a friend of mine that you've met, Rachel Gold. She is a mindfulness and fashion expert, to talk to you mainly about Strictly, actually, and the clothes and the outfits that you were wearing.
Yeah, I'm coming up, I'm coming up.
Anne, this is Rachel. You met her quickly earlier. Now, Rachel is a fashion stylist and a mindfulness coach. Now,
A what?
A mindfulness coach.
Right.
Which is, I knew you'd react like that, but I've got something to put to you. Do you think if you're not religious like we are, if you don't get your peace of mind from church, could you get it from being mindful, or do you think this is a load of old bunkum?
The second. But I do think that there are lots of ways that people can find peace. For example, just going out into the garden.
Exactly.
And listening to the birdsong.
Exactly.
Okay.
Now, you don't need to be meditating as you're doing it. You don't need to be mindful as you're doing it. But just go there, just listen to tweet, 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 tweet. And that can, that can make you very peaceful indeed.
Which
And
is
people have been
exactly
doing
what I
that since the Stone Age. Yeah. And, there's nothing new about it.
But what would you
100%.
say is new
100%.
about mindfulness? What would you call it?
I would say
anxiety
exactly,
and stuff like that?
I would say exactly the same as Anne has said, because I think that people become very pretentious about mindfulness, about meditation, about incense and wandering around. I'm not really into all of that sort of thing. All I want to see is when people... No, I'm not, actually. When people are anxious or stressed, there's a lot of this at the moment. Everyone says that they're anxious, they're stressed, they can't cope.
You're going to give Reese Widdecombe a bad
Let
turn.
me finish. In my generation, we just got on with it. There wasn't all of this business of anxiety and, I can't cope and all the rest of it. However, I am aware that there are a lot of people who do suffer with that. So what I suggest is a walk in the park, a visit to a dog sanctuary, a visit to a cat sanctuary. Just get over yourself a little bit.
Yes.
Take some deep breaths. Be in the now. Stop moaning about the past. Stop predicting into the future, and just get on with your life. So that's basically what I do.
Yeah. I mean, I always rebel when I hear people talking about stress, as if it's some great thing. I mean, I look back to the generation before us, my parents' generation. And my father was in the Navy during the war. He didn't know whether Hitler's bombs had hit my mother's house. My mother didn't know whether Hitler's torpedoes had hit my father's ship. My mother had premature twins, one of whom died, one of whom was born very briefly paralysed. Those are the things that I call stress. My uncle, the vicar I mentioned, he was in Monty's army. He was in the desert with the flies and the filth and everything. That is stress. Stress nowadays is about any small thing. Do you know, even Prince William, whom I admire, but even Prince William, when Charles had to spend 3 days isolating during COVID, I mean, 3 days isolating in rather nice surroundings, William said, oh, it's very bad for his mental health. And I went whoosh.
Yeah.
And in those days, I went whoosh in print because I was still writing for the Express.
Yes. No, I agree. I mean, I said to someone the other day, he came along and he said to me, oh, do you know, when will my luck change? I mean, you know, I got a parking ticket the other day and the washing machine's broken. And I said, sorry, luck. Bad luck. Okay. Bad
Perhaps
luck
we
is
should just
actually being in a
point
head-on
enough.
collision and being in hospital for over
Yeah.
a year. It's
Yeah.
not parking your car somewhere and then getting a ticket and then moaning about having to pay for it. So I am a different mindfulness meditation person.
Jolly good. Well done.
Absolutely.
Now, my other question to you, Miss Widdecombe, is your Strictly days. Do you miss having those beautiful gowns made for you? Did you
What did you call them? The
beautiful
gowns.
beautiful gowns? They were beautiful gowns. You were very stylish. I've seen you. Don't throw your eyes up. When you were in
You were.
Cambridge recently,
Yes.
you had the most beautiful, almost see-through sequin top
A
on, and that
sequin
must be
lace top.
yours.
I saw that.
You like a nice
like a
piece.
bit of
No, I
sequin in the
have.
day.
No, I have. When you do the Oxford or the Cambridge Unions, you have to wear evening dress. That is
Yes.
the rule.
Yes,
And I have 1, 2, 3, 4 evening dresses.
yes.
That was what you saw me in. I mean, by day, I wear something. This is an ordinary
This is
party.
marvellous.
This is
Yes,
an
but it's
ordinary
marvellous. It's
party.
a colour, isn't it? And
But
we were
do
discussing
you
this
love
before.
dressing up like that?
Not in the Strictly stuff, no. And that's not an insult to the wardrobe at Strictly. That is just that was not my style at all.
Okay.
Oh,
No.
I remember it now. Oh.
Particularly the yellow number.
Oh, Big Bird. Big Bird was Big
liked
Bird was
that. I
good
thought it was
fun, but
wonderful.
that
That
was
was
that
good
was the end
fun.
of it. Big Bird. In fact,
That's still trending.
when I was doing the
Yes.
tour, Craig said to me he wanted me to wear something that stood out because we'd be doing these big venues like the O2. So he asked me to get Big Bird, as I call it, it's that big yellow dress with the feathers. So I rang up Wardrobe and said, could I borrow Big Bird for the tour? And they said, we're terribly sorry, they just sold it in the United States.
Oh.
So I wore something else. But then, when I came to do my first pantomime, I walked into my dressing room, and there hanging up was Big Bird. So the Americans sent it back.
Fun.
That is brilliant. Now,
Fantastic.
I'm going to ask you to play a game.
Yes.
We don't leave you hanging.
No.
It's called the Suddenly Single Honesty Box, and it has questions in it.
Right.
And you just answer them as you see fit, or
Right.
not at all if you don't want to. Right. So mine is, if you could ban one modern trend or phrase, what would it be?
Ooh.
Shut up. That's what I would
No,
ban.
one word, like.
Oh, like.
Like.
You know, people just drop it in their sentence all the time.
You know, they say like I said, and like
Oh,
like
like
this,
I
and
said.
like.
That's
Yeah.
annoying.
And they don't just say, I had an apple. They say I had like an apple.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, why
yes,
like an apple? What was
yes.
like an apple that you
What
had?
about them? What about them? Them people?
Well, it should be
That's
those
just
people.
bad
Everyone
grammar,
says
isn't
That's
it?
just bad grammar. But
they say
like,
it
I
a
think
lot,
it's
don't
horrible.
they? A lot of people say that. I've noticed it on television.
Well, that's because
a
they
lot,
don't teach
them.
proper grammar.
Yeah, they don't.
Mm.
Oh, I want to know this one about you.
Yeah.
What's the most rebellious thing you did as a teenager?
Oh, two of us from the third form is what it was called in those days.
Yes.
Dressed up as ghosts and wandered through the convent in the depths of the night. And we ran into a nun and she jumped about 20 feet in the air.
Did you get badly told off for that one?
Oh, we got
yes,
gated. We
yes.
were due for a Saturday out of every third week. You had a Saturday off, and we were due for our third Saturday, and we were gated. We weren't allowed to have our third Saturday.
I'm afraid mine's a lot worse than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I went to Stringfellows without my parents' permission, aged
Did
14,
you?
and my father had. I think he kind of knew because I was always quite a rebellious child,
Right.
and he went there, so he came looking for me. 'Cause
He went there.
he used to go to Stringfellows. yeah.
Right.
So he didn't go there with me, obviously, but he went looking there.
Oh,
because I think he
crikey.
thought, well, where would she go?
Go, Stringfellows.
Yeah, so he found me in Stringfellows.
Oh, he found you?
He
Yeah.
found me, yes. Pulled me out, literally by my hair. Took me home. Yes. That was probably my most rebellious thing.
And yours?
What's the one thing you wish people understood about you?
What do you wish people understood about you?
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely no good. If you're a politician, it's no good worrying about what people think. They're always
is
going to get it
that.
wrong anyway. So
Yes.
forget it. Forget it.
That's
forget
true,
it.
actually.
Yeah.
Do you know what? Somebody once told me, this isn't much use to people that are not commented on, but I used to review the papers for Nick Ferrari on his
Yeah.
show. And I said, oh my gosh, I'd read this comment that said, she brings a new meaning to the word ordinary. And he went, what are you reading it for? Never, never read any comment written about you. Never read one since.
Yeah.
And he was completely correct.
Yes.
Absolutely right. Yeah.
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 Well, I don't. I don't do social media, so therefore I don't troll social media.
Yeah. Because it can drive you mad.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Some people are very unkind.
Yeah. Yeah. You've read, did you
Oh,
do
did
your
I have
second
one? Yeah. What is something you have changed your mind about as you got older? Politics. I left the Tory party.
You did.
Religion. I left the Church of England for Catholicism. What else?
So you could be a Buddhist communist by the time you're
A mindful
90.
Buddhist communist.
Into mindfulness.
I'm not sure which
gonna
of
buy
those
you some
three is
yoga
worse.
pants.
Mindful, Buddhist or communist.
Wearing a yellow dress.
Well, thank you for coming in.
Great pleasure.
And it's been lovely to have you. I hope you feel it went okay, because I felt a bit scared interviewing you, if I'll be honest.
No, it's much better than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be rubbish about relationships and that sort of
did
stuff.
you?
Well, I mean, relationships aren't rubbish, Anne. You can have them.
They're
with a
rubbish
lot
if you don't have them, dear.
But that's
Yeah,
your
yeah.
choice.
I
I mean, I
agree.
can put you on a
Yes.
dating app. I could send you to
You'd
a.
be
no.
lucky. You'd
I
be
could,
lucky.
I tell you what, I
No.
could send you to a very expensive dating agency, but I think you'd scare the living bejesus out of most of the men.
Well, I hope I would. Because I think it's a nonsense. I think it's complete nonsense. I think you should meet people, if that's the way you want to do it, you should meet people normally.
But you can't meet people normally anymore.
What do you mean? People have done that throughout the ages, but long before the internet was invented.
The internet wasn't invented when I was a child, but when I was a child, I would go to a bar or a club, or when I say a child, in my 20s, sit at a bar, and a man would expect to come and talk to you, or there would be a last dance and they would ask you to dance. So it happened organically. These things don't exist anymore. So where am
What,
I
you
going
mean you can't
to...
go and sit in a bar anymore?
No man would come up
What's
to
she
you
talking
in a
about? What's she
bar.
talking about?
Would
Oh,
a
that's
man
because-
come up
That's
to you
because
in
of
a
the
bar?
Me Too movement.
Well,
Scared the
yes.
men off.
Yes,
Scared the
yes,
men off.
Yes,
it has.
yes. I
Yeah.
do feel sorry for young men.
I
They're
do.
frightened
Very.
to open the
I
door
do.
now, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, they're frightened to do anything.
They are
Yes,
frightened to do
yeah,
anything.
they
At
are.
least
Yeah.
they know if they've gone in an app that you're up, you've agreed to go and meet them.
Oh,
I'm afraid it's the newfangled way.
it's a newfangled way. It's all right.
Yes.
I'm very old-fangled.
Yeah, but what are we going to do? Bring back the farmers' dances, the balls? I mean,
That's a
there is
good
nowhere
idea.
The
to
village
go.
hall dance.
Yes,
if
the
you
The
remember
village
the
hall
village
dance,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah, the last record, even if no one
But
spoke
most
to you all
people, most
night.
people meet people at work. Then they meet
They're
the
not
friends.
allowed to
Then they meet the
anymore.
friends of people at work, and it's called social interaction.
Yes.
I don't think it happens anywhere near the way it used to. When I used to work on a newspaper that, well, actually, do you know what I think it happened everywhere? I used to work, I dated somebody from the Sun, and it was very normal, even when I was on a magazine, that people, men and women were allowed to date. They interacted all the time. Now it's like, well, you couldn't possibly ask him out. You're his boss, and that's not a good look. And if anything went wrong, you'd be in trouble.
Right. Yes.
The rules
Well,
are
it needs
completely
somebody to break
changed.
that mold because it's ridiculous.
Yes. Yeah, it is ridiculous.
It really does need somebody to break that mold because it is
I
just
think it's a
hampering
shame.
normal social interaction.
It is.
It really is.
It's
And
encouraging more and more phone swiping.
Yes. Yeah.
And I really am sorry for the men because, you know,
Yes,
No,
am
I agree.
also.
I agree.
I mean, one man once joked to me, somebody I knew very well, and he came into a room where I was, we was a green room before an event, and I was the only one in the green room, and he came in, looked round, and he said, "Do I need a chaperone?" And it was a joke.
Yeah,
it was a
wasn't.
joke.
Yes.
But it wasn't.
But
it wasn't.
I understood exactly
Yes.
what he was
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
You know the other big one? So Tim Vincent, he's a friend of mine, he said, I never know when I'm on a train whether to offer a woman a seat or not.
No.
And I
Yes.
said, what are you talking about? If you see me, I want the seat. And he said, yes, but some women will say, do you think I look infirm? Why would you ask me, do I need a seat? They're so aggressive
Well, I think I
about
Yeah.
that. He says, I actually now don't offer because I'm worried about how they're going to react. So we have done this to ourselves.
well, when you're my age, and visibly so because I've got white hair, when you're my age, men will offer their seats. So will girls, actually. They
Yeah.
will get your case down from trains. They
Yes.
will help, and they won't feel embarrassed about it simply because of the age.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they think that you will be
I'm
appreciative
their granny.
of their help.
I'm their granny,
Yeah.
and in their
Yeah.
mind, you know, I'm
Yeah.
like granny, and therefore they should help. You know, there's
Yeah.
duties there.
Yeah.
And I think it's pity we've lost it with the younger age groups. But take heart. When you're my age, it's fine. They'll do everything.
I'm probably about 5 minutes from your age, Anne.
You're not.
I've just had a lot of nip tuck, which we've talked about. Okay, well, it's
Yeah, fine.
wonderful,
Fine.
wonderful. Thank you
Okay.
so much.
Lovely to
Yeah.
meet you.